Hey guys, Shikhar here. So in this episode, I got a chance to speak with Alex Filippenko, professor of astronomy here at UC Berkeley. So he's won the most prestigious teaching awards here at Cal. He was in fact voted best professor on campus a record 9 times, and he also happens to be one of the world's most cited astronomers, documented in over 900 research papers. Not only is he an amazing teacher, but he's also a very interesting man. He's got tons of great advice, and in this episode, he also shares a lot of funny stories. So I hope you enjoy the show, and otherwise, see you next week. So thank you so much for being here, firstly.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of this podcast.
After the longest email thread in the world, I think, we've finally made it out.
I'm hard to nail down.
Yeah, you're a busy man. So you're like the most loved professor on campus.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really enjoy interacting with students and teaching them about the wonders of the universe.
Of course, yeah. So the UC Berkeley student body has voted you as the best professor on campus a record 9 times now.
Wow.
And in 2006, you were awarded the U.S. Professor of the Year Award.
That's right, yes.
So I guess, how did you get into the cosmos, the universe?
Right.
And when did this interest of yours develop?
Sure. Well, I've always been a science nut from my earliest days. You know, I remember in the first grade playing with magnets in the sand and picking up iron filings and things like that. And then I got interested in insects and rocks and all sorts of things, but chemistry became my main interest from age 10 through 17. In fact, I entered college as a chemistry major. But when I was a freshman in high school, my parents gave me a small telescope as a gift. And the third random bright star that I pointed to turned out to be Saturn, and that just knocked my socks off. I had never seen Saturn before, and plus I discovered it on my own. And so this started a growing interest in astronomy and astrophysics, which developed even more in my freshman year of college when I took an introductory astronomy course, much like the one that I teach now. And I just got so jazzed up that I decided to switch to physics with the intention of becoming an astrophysicist.
What did you go into college as? What major?
Well, chemistry to begin with, right.
Okay.
But I had this growing interest in astrophysics, and in my freshman year I had some accidents, chemical explosions, and so I thought, well, gee whiz, if for no reason, then as an act of self-preservation, I should switch majors and stay away from all the dangerous chemicals,
Well, you certainly made the right decision. So you went to college in UCSB. Do you want to tell us about how that was?
Yeah, so that was UC Santa Barbara. I actually grew up in that area, so it was familiar to me. My mother worked there. And I was one of these kids who actually didn't make much use of going to the beach or surfing and all that. I was actually very, very studious there, had no social life. I actually had a better social life in grad school at Caltech than I did as an undergrad at Santa Barbara. That's a pretty sad statement to make, but it's true. So I studied, physics and math really a lot, and became progressively more enthralled with studying the universe, and so that's what I've done ever since.
That's awesome. Were you the type of student who had to put in the hours, or were you just breezing through your classes? Because when I think of Alex Filippenko, I think of this very gifted astrophysicist. Did you have to put in the hours, we see students at Cal here putting, or do you think that it came very naturally to you?
Oh no, I had to put in the hours. I mean, I studied really a lot. I slept very little. Now, admittedly, I took nearly twice the course load that's normal for a
Holy
student.
Crap.
Yeah, so that's one reason I didn't sleep. And in fact, the university was telling me that I'm supposed to graduate at the end of my sophomore year, or certainly at the end of my junior year. And I said, well, as long as I don't take more than 4 years, you should give me my 4 years. I'm not really blocking anyone else from being there. So, I try not to have regrets in life, but I think that I kind of missed out on part of the college experience, the social experience, and I didn't need to take that many classes. The other thing is that although I gained a lot of breadth, I took a lot of classes and gained breadth, it was to some degree at the expense of depth in a particular area. And a better compromise would have been to take fewer classes but learn the material in a deeper way with a more full understanding.
Because I have friends that go to university in the UK, and there the teaching method is completely different in the sense that at the University of California, you get a lot of breadth. You get to take a lot of courses in a lot of different fields, which has advantages, right? Because
Sure.
You get a lot of knowledge. But in the UK, they really just pick one subject, and they focus in on that for 3 years. It's 3 years there. So that's something which is interesting, I find. I guess now I want to transition into talking about teaching.
Sure.
Something that you're obviously very good at, very gifted at. One question I had was that, so Astro C10 is obviously an introductory course.
Yep.
How do you reconcile obviously teaching the most accurate information, but at the same time in a way that's accessible to like the larger student body and not just astrophysics majors?
Sure. That's a great question. In fact, people tell me that I can simultaneously sort of reach a large range in the audience. I try to present the material in a simple and engaging way for those who are being introduced for the first time, but I also have little tidbits that are more advanced that will grab the attention of those students who may already have done a fair amount of reading on the subject and already know something. In fact, though the course is designed for non-science majors, there are actually quite a few science types who take it, even physics and astrophysics majors who take it, and they find that it's informative and entertaining for them because I simultaneously throw things out that are sort of geared to these different audiences. And I do it in such a way that it doesn't really confuse the introductory student too much. In fact, I will often say, here's an additional piece of information that you don't have to worry about if you don't want to, but for those who are interested and know quite a bit more, this may be of even greater interest, So it's just something that I've learned how to do. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm told that it's the same way in my public talks. I reach introductory members of the audience as well as those who have a more advanced understanding of the material.
And that's something which is actually a very good skill to have, because what I find is that when I've had professors who are obviously very gifted in their field, communicating those ideas is a completely different ballgame altogether, and you seem to be really good at that. With that being said, what do you think is like the best part about teaching?
Oh, definitely interacting with the students and being able to convey to them something that's really far out and abstract. They had no understanding of it initially, but then you see this light go off in their eyes when they finally understand it, and you see that you have actually conveyed something really interesting to a student and got them to explore a train of thought that they might never have run across otherwise.
What is such a concept, let's just say an example of a concept which may seem to be difficult at first, but then it's something over the years of teaching you've seen like the light bulb go off in their eyes? Yeah,
I have a great example, and that is that space itself has a curvature. It actually wraps around, in a sense, other mathematically describable but physically inaccessible dimensions. Okay, and so the idea that the universe is warped or curved is pretty bizarre, but an analogy works well. If you take a balloon and just say that the universe is just that rubber itself, you can go along the rubber, forward, backward, left and right, any combination of those two motions, but into the balloon or out, that is, the radial dimension is off limits. It's mathematically there, but it's not part of the universe itself. So I tell them, just think of your universe as being the balloon, but now in 3 dimensions, wrapping around a 4th dimension somewhere out there in hyperspace. So I like using analogies, and that is often very, very helpful for students.
That's awesome, yeah. And as a student, I like it when professors use analogies because it makes like a seemingly pretty hard jump from concept to concept a bit easier now because I have something to reference it to as well.
Yeah, absolutely right, yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess now I kind of want to transition into talking about just some miscellaneous concepts within astronomy, all like wormholes, black holes, all that good stuff. So I actually told Reddit that we were going to do this talk, so I got a bunch of cool questions. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Sure.
So with that said, one of the cool questions that I got was regarding extraterrestrial life, your possibility of alien life.
Yeah.
What are your views on alien life, if any?
Yeah, so, this is a data-starved field. We still don't have the data showing any form of life outside Earth. I think that primitive life, by which I mean bacteria and microbes, may well be reasonably common out there, but intelligence and mechanical ability at our level is probably rare. I don't think we're unique, Certainly not in the observable universe, which has about 100 billion galaxies with 10 or 100 billion stars each. But we may be sufficiently rare that there's only one of us or a handful of us in our own Milky Way galaxy of 100 billion stars. And the reason I think that is, there are actually several reasons. One is that for most of Earth's 4.5 billion year history, and for most of the 3.8 billion history of life on Earth, there hasn't been anything particularly intelligent or mechanically able on Earth. So an alien zipping by Earth for most of Earth's history would have said, well, there's nothing very interesting there. We arose just in the last 250,000 years, Homo sapiens, and even early hominids arose only 3 or 4 million years ago. So that's just a very small amount of time over this billions of year history on Earth. And it seems to have occurred in a fairly random way. It's not clear that our level of intelligence and mechanical ability is a long-term evolutionary advantage. Yes, we've improved the quality of life in the last century. Infant mortality is down, and so on and so forth. But it's not clear that our level of intelligence will lead to our long-term longevity. Okay, it may indeed lead to a demise in our existence if we accidentally or intentionally blow ourselves up. The dinosaurs were around for 100 and some odd million years, and they never got any smarter. Cockroaches don't get any smarter. They'll survive a nuclear war, whereas we might initiate such a war that destroys us and other things. And the second thing is that the third thing is that there have been tens of billions of species of life on Earth, or at least 10 billion species, and nothing, as far as we can tell, has come close to our level of intelligence and mechanical ability. Again, suggesting that it's kind of a rare process, and it doesn't just happen every time you have a microbe that forms. It's not inevitably going to lead to intelligence at our level. And then finally, we see no evidence of such intelligence. If there were lots of intelligent advanced civilizations in our galaxy, presumably at least some of them would have by now populated other planets, other planetary systems, and we see no credible evidence that they've been here on Earth. So Enrico Fermi sort of said this decades ago, if they're abundant, where are they? Why haven't we seen them? The Fermi Paradox.
Yeah, why haven't they made contact with us on Earth, right?
Yeah.
That's the premise.
We're unlikely to be the most advanced such civilization. Advanced life could have formed 1 billion years ago and could have populated the galaxy, but it didn't, or at least we don't see any evidence of that.
We don't see. Have you heard Elon Musk's simulation argument?
Yeah, I have. It's a very interesting argument. We might be a simulation, some video game of some incredibly advanced alien. And although that's possible, I prefer to think that that's not the case. We're not just some video game, but I don't throw out the idea as being crazy. It's not crazy.
Interesting, yeah. So talking about Elon Musk, actually, so now we've seen rise of organizations like SpaceX, which have been like, you don't see something like that 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So how do you see the interplay of the private sector with the public sector in contributing, let's say, to like the further exploration and study of the universe in the 21st century?
Yeah, great question. I think the private sector is playing an increasingly important role. Sure, NASA has done a good job. We've had lots of interesting space missions, most famously the landing on the moon and all that. But let's face it, in the private sector, you can often do things, in a sense, faster and cheaper, because there aren't quite as many checks and balances and requirements as there are in the federal government. If a mistake occurs and someone gets killed in the federal government project, that's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal even if it were in the private sector. But look, we're explorers of the universe. We're like the pioneers on Earth. Things are going to happen. Accidents are going to happen. When it's the taxpayers' money paying for it through NASA or something like that, it's a much bigger deal than when someone goes off on some exploratory company like SpaceX and goes off and does it. And so in the end, things can be done more cheaply and more efficiently sometimes in the private sector. And already, some years ago, NASA discontinued the space shuttle missions that can service things like the International Space Station. and they haven't had a successor. But now you've got the private sector going into low Earth orbit or accessing ISS or the Hubble Space Telescope or things like that, whatever might be out there. So, it's a new world, and I don't know whether Musk will be able to get to Mars and produce a colony of 80,000 people as quickly as...
By like 2025.
No, I think that's extremely unlikely to happen. But it's great to have forward-thinking, hard-working pioneers like Musk out there pushing the field forward. And ultimately, a private-public partnership is likely to be the most successful. And indeed, already SpaceX and some of these other companies are building the rockets that will go to the International Space Station and things like that. In other words, NASA has already ceded some of that domain to the private sector.
Very cool. Another question which I thought was interesting was, what do you think is going to be like the next... So we saw like the Higgs boson being discovered a few years back. That shook the world. I'm actually from Switzerland, so that happened in CERN. So to me, that was really cool too.
Right.
What do you think is going to be like the next big discovery within the space world?
Well, let me just say that a recent one already happened since the time of the Higgs, and that was the discovery of gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of space-time that Einstein actually predicted in 1916. When you have like two black holes or two neutron stars merging together, you actually send out a wave, a ripple in the actual shape of space and the passage of time, and it's very, very weak. It's enormously hard to detect, but such a signal was detected in September of 2015 from two merging black holes, and then from several other merging black holes subsequently. And then this past August 2017, a pair of neutron stars that merged was detected in this way. And the neutron stars are actually made out of real material, not just, a warping of space. So when they hit each other, they produced a flash of electromagnetic radiation, optical, infrared, radio, X-rays, gamma rays. And those flashes were seen by telescopes used by conventional astronomers. And so now for the first time, we have both gravitational waves and optical light, or I should say both electromagnetic waves, which we've been getting for a long time, and gravitational waves with which to study an object. And that is enormous. And indeed, the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2017 was given to the leaders of the LIGO collaboration, who in fact first detected the merging black holes in September of 2015. But now things are even better because we have colliding neutron stars, which we can see electromagnetically as well as with gravitational waves. So that occurred sooner than I thought it would have. And in interviews like this 2 or more years ago, when people asked me what's the next big thing, I would have said gravitational waves, but I didn't think it would occur as early as 2015, 2016.
Well, I got you at the right time.
Well, that's right. So beyond this, there are a number of things that we hope will happen. If there really is life out there, either intelligent or maybe just microbial, we hope to find evidence for it. I mean, real, incontrovertible evidence that there's life out there. If we could find it even one other place in our solar system, then that would imply that it's everywhere because, if it formed twice independently in our solar system, that means it's easy to form life. If we don't find it in our solar system, then it's going to be harder. But now that lots and lots of planets are being found orbiting other stars, we have the capability of studying, for example, their atmospheric composition and looking for some of the signposts of life, or looking for signals through, for example, this big project called Breakthrough Listen, where Yuri Milner and others are funding a lot of new technology to listen for signals that might be coming from intelligent creatures out there. So I'm hoping that'll be the next big thing. But if that doesn't happen, something else will, maybe something unanticipated.
That's awesome. That's actually a pretty cool note to end on, I feel. So ending, if you could give one piece of advice to like an incoming freshman, say they're going to enter, what year are we in, 2018, what would you say? And if they're interested in astronomy, what would you say are the best things they can start to do now in like their freshman year?
Sure. So if they're interested in astronomy, this leads me back to one other thing I kind of want to talk about. And that is in terms of sort of what are we going to find out soon. I'd love to know the nature of dark matter. All right. Maybe we'll find dark matter particles that have never been detected. That might be the next big thing. We might finally understand dark energy. That might be the next big thing, although that one I think is harder. So, coming back then to your question about advice, for those interested in astrophysics, there's still so much to be done out there. Sometimes people say physics is dead or astrophysics is dead. We already know everything interesting. Well, we don't. We know that 95% of the universe is made out of dark energy and dark matter, but we don't truly understand the origin and true physical nature of either dark matter or dark energy. Maybe the dark matter is little WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles, or maybe not. Dark energy, maybe it's the vacuum energy, the vacuum itself of space, maybe not. So we know the composition of the universe, but we don't know its constituents in any detail. So there's a big question. Finding Earth-like planets, those capable of having life as we know it, that's a big thing nowadays. Finding the first stars, the first galaxies. I mean, there's so much still to do in astrophysics. So my advice for those students who want to pursue astrophysics is, dive in, learn as much as you can, try to become part of a research team as early as you can, because that early exposure to research can be both very useful and also very inspirational to a student to keep on going. A little bit like my discovery, quote unquote, of Saturn, which of course millions of people knew about, but I discovered it on my own. And then I was able to do a more real research project later in my undergraduate years. So become involved in research and try your hand at different aspects of astrophysics. Go to seminars, go to lectures given by people both here and those that are passing through. And then for students who don't really know yet what they want to do, that's okay, especially in your first year or two. Shop around. Find something that you're passionate about. Take a bunch of breadth courses. My own course, Astro C10, is not intended to convert 850 students to astrophysics majors. It's to, in a sense, introduce non-majors to astronomy and to science in general, a noble field. Now, invariably, a couple of students convert to astrophysics as a result of my course. Great, but that's not the initial intention. Nevertheless, students who take a wide range of breadth courses like this can't help but be exposed to a bunch of things, one or more of which might really ignite their passions. And so, as I tell students in my very last lecture, you're in a privileged position. You're not worried about where your next meal will come from, and you're not, most of you, worried about, having a roof over your heads the way many people on Earth are. Try, if possible, to find as a profession something that really is almost like a hobby that you enjoy doing in your spare time. And by the way, you get paid for it as well. All right. And as long as you're paid enough to live comfortably, great. You don't need to make lots of money. A lot of people who make lots of money are doing things that they absolutely detest. It's actually better to be happier in life, make enough to comfortably live on, but do something that you really enjoy. And I feel enormously fortunate and privileged to be in that position. Most of the time, I'm doing things that I really enjoy. Sure, I have to search for research grants and things like that. That's not all that much fun. It'd be great if someone just handed me a ton of money and said, here, hire a bunch of grad students, undergrads, postdocs, do whatever you want. But that's not the reality, although it might be. Anyone listening out there, if you want to fund my research or educational outreach efforts, please contact me, But try to find something that you really love to do. Because if you spend most of your waking hours doing things that you don't like just to survive, that's not much fun. And you're getting this great education and this exposure to a large number of fascinating topics, one or more of which you might find is suitable for a profession, a career, but one that you really enjoy doing.
Alex, I think that's an amazing note to end on. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to reach out to you, where can they do so?
Sure, that's great, and thank you again for inviting me to do this podcast. Well, I certainly encourage people to take my introductory course, Astro C10, which I normally teach in the fall. The next one will be fall of 2018, and often there's a long wait list and people just give up. But if you just email me, I'll make sure you get on. In general, people can attend my office hours for that class, even if they're not enrolled in that class. I give public lectures. I'll be giving a Cal Day lecture. I often give a homecoming lecture. So I'm out there on campus quite a bit. It's a bit harder to reach me if you just randomly email me questions, because a lot of people randomly email me questions and I just can't respond to most of them. So I really like communal office hours, and sometimes 30 or 40 students will come to my office hours, and I'll give each of them over a course of several days a chance to ask one or more questions. But find me, and I'm always happy to talk. It's just a question of finding the time to do so. I can't necessarily talk to students individually,
Cool. Awesome. Alex, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.